Hi, and welcome to week 4 for Senior Housing Operations with the SOU Management of Aging Services program. Before we dive into this week's topic, I wanted to recap last week's discussion board. We had a good discussion. I saw the comments about hand-holding employees, and I'm sure many of you who are in the management profession currently know what that feels like. There are upcoming challenges with the new generations in the workforce. Some of you talked about the entitlement issues, narcissism, and what the implications are for management as we deal with the new generations. And very interesting comments also about how a sense of entitlement for an employee is not necessarily a bad thing for the company or the employee. And I think many of you were right in your comments that companies will have to adjust to that new culture and accommodate for things that are more important to employees, such as free time, compensation, and so forth. So it shall be interesting in the future. Now let's dive into Resident Services Part 1. Today we will discuss the concierge operation, which is the front desk, as well as the security, emergency response, and the resident handbook, and also dive a little bit into governing boards and residents on governing boards for senior living organizations. And again, we have a narrated PowerPoint presentation for the topic that will start right now.
Resident services includes a variety of areas in a senior living operation, including the front desk, resident relations, transportation security, and so forth, health, wellness. This is part 1 out of 2 presentations, and since all of you have read the first part of the chapter, Resident Services, I just wanted to go into a few areas and highlight a few points of interest. First of all, the concierge or front desk operation has increasingly become important for senior living operations for a couple of reasons. One is it's clearly the face of the community and it's a marketing tool. The second one is that more and more the senior living industry moves towards a hospitality model to offer more services, a broader range of services, and to accommodate for residents' requests. So therefore, it's not only the marketing tool externally to the community, but it's also a public relations tool internally to the community to make residents happy. Very important central function in senior living operations. Security and emergency response. This slide here gives you some bullet points on what security does. Emergency response is one of the hot topics in the industry. Providers oftentimes struggle with the definition of emergency response and how far you want to go. Typically, you want to define that in the resident handbook or other materials, to what degree you will respond and what you will do in a case of an emergency. For independent living, CCRC, and congregated housing providers, it is recommended to clarify that there's a non-medical response. The first responder is not a nurse or a doctor, but rather a person that responds to the emergency call by the resident, comforts them, and then takes appropriate measures. You also want to make clear that 911 is still the choice number 1 when it comes to emergencies, so residents can actually be taken care of through the 911 emergency responders and medical responders and so forth. Heart attacks, strokes, and so forth just don't lend themselves to a call button call for an emergency responder to appear on the scene. Therefore, it's just important to point that out to the resident and preferably put that in the resident handbook. Resident relations and communication, very important. All of the things that are listed here are crucial to a successful resident relations program. Beyond the formal town hall presentations, you want to make sure you have close relations with key residents, you have informal meetings and so forth, and you're transparent about the financial status of the organization, especially not-for-profit organizations, as well as just the operation and things that are going on in the community. As I already pointed out, the resident handbook is an important tool. and it's oftentimes an appendix to the contract that residents sign before they move in, which makes it a legal document that outlines rule to abide by, lists amenities and services the community offers, and again has the emergency and safety information in it, just to clarify what the community offers, what the community doesn't offer, clarifies community living rules, and so forth. Resident satisfaction is very important. As the author also pointed out in the book, on page 78 there's actually the cycle of resident satisfaction, and I want you to make sure you understand that and review that carefully. Satisfaction or opinion surveys are a tool to gauge satisfaction, but the reality is you oftentimes communicate with residents so frequently on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. You have close relationships through your resident relations program, that those satisfaction or opinion surveys are more tools to gauge, maybe benchmark the facility against community or industry benchmarks, or for a multi-site provider to gauge the different communities against each other if they own multiple communities. On page 84 there's a variety of response tactics, step-by-step responses posted. I think those are good procedures, and active listening obviously is very important and number one, and taking complaints seriously. So the Residents' Council represents all residents. What I want to point out here is that it's just important for administration to be active, to attend advisory committee meetings such as the Dining Advisory Committee or the Facilities Advisory Committee, and to make sure you're actively engaged and you tackle challenges and you're transparent and you respond to resident input. It's just very important. Governing boards are typically from the outside, representatives from the outside. The reason why I put this in this presentation is because the next point is residents on governing boards, so you can read through this, the typical function and makeup of a governing board, especially not-for-profit organizations. And residents on governing boards, you know, that's a very sensitive subject, and it's not common practice. As the author pointed out, only 12% of communities have voting members on the board. I listed some potential advantages and conflicts that may arise through having residents on governing boards, and there's a discussion question posted on the discussion board for this week's homework, and I look forward to people's input and a lively discussion, and we will see each other again next week with week 5 of senior housing operations. As usual, if you have any questions, post to the Ask the Instructor discussion board or send me an email, and see you next week. Thank you.